Pribula, whenever y'all ready for questions. Start.
Beau, have you seen any difference since game one with the way your running game has worked in the way defenses have approached you, or do you expect to see differences going forward?
I think it's just improved, really, ever since game one. I think, and I think that's kind of normal, when an offensive line can kind of mesh and get together, and the running backs like Jamal and Ahmad can, kind of get in their flow. I think that's really, been the main area of improvement. It's just being comfortable with each other and not just running one type of run, kind of mixing in variations of runs, whether it's gap scheme or outside zone, inside zone, different things like that to kind of keep the defense on their heels has been good as well.
Well, I think Coach Stern said sometime last week that helping a quarterback starts with getting them a good running back, not necessarily a good wide receiver. How is what Ahmad and Jamal have been doing this season? How has it helped you as you've started your starting quarterback career?
It's huge. Anytime there's a run game, it just helps. It just makes my job easier. Anytime that offensive line can get movement up front and the running backs can, get yards, keep us on schedule, puts us in a great position, especially, making third downs easier and, second and medium, second and short, just puts us in an easier position. And then obviously for, different things like play action, it can open stuff up because now you have to respect the run. So I think it just makes my job easier.
But what do you expect based on what you've seen from film from this Alabama defense?
It's a really good football team, very physical, great size, all the measurables, from a team you'd expect from Alabama, obviously. So, just have to, play a good game and stay true to ourselves and not try to do too much. But, really good football team, and that's what you expect in the SEC week in, week out.
Well, through the first 5 games, what was kind of your assessment of your play? What's one maybe one area through the 5 week that you kind of highlighted? Hey, I think I can get better here.
Yeah, I think just been a solid start. I think just continuing to be consistent, and I think in the bye week just working through different things as far as footwork, kind of adjusting different things that I think can help me in the pocket and just pocket awareness and different stuff like that. There's always a lot of things to improve, even when games go well. There's always a lot of things you can take out of that. So having 5 games so far this year to kind of nitpick and see different areas I can improve was good for the bye week to kind of take a step back and kind of focus within to see how we can improve.
Beau, you kind of talked about those improvements. It's been 3 straight games with an interception. What have you learned from those decisions that you'll be able to use going forward?
Yeah, I think just being consistent in my decision making. I think it's something that it's not just one thing. Each interception kind of has its own story. And it could be a different thing each time, whether it's just a bad decision or putting myself in a bad decision because maybe escaping the pocket too early, different things like that. So just kind of seeing why they happen and then just kind of fixing the different areas of why they would happen.
Beau, you talked about a few times the pocket awareness, and the footwork. What do you attribute that to, and kind of where do you circle needing to improve that? Is that kind of the initial reaction to pressure, or is it kind of wanting to run? Where do you attribute that to?
I'd just say kind of just the initial reaction to pressure, just maybe things being covered downfield. Like I said, it's not always just one thing, it could be different things. So I think just an overarching theme of just staying calm, trusting your protection and keeping your eyes downfield.
Beau, that 20-plus yard down the field range is somewhere that you all just haven't really tested so far much this season outside of maybe the Central Arkansas game. Is that somewhere you'd like to test going forward, or are you all seemingly perfectly content with peppering sort of that 0 to 10, 10 to 20 yard range?
You're talking about just like the distance of the passes downfield?
Yeah, just air yards.
Yeah. I think it's really just taking what the defense gives you. Like you look at the first game compared to the last game we just played, it's like first game, Central Arkansas, they were letting us rip it down the field. And then last game, they were just not, they weren't gonna let that happen. So, it's, things like that, like UMass, it's like, you can't just force it down the field, cause they're not gonna give you that. You just gotta take what the defense gives each week. And, moving forward, depending on what kind of defenses the teams run and what they do, I think, they'll kind of naturally happen.
Two more, Cody, and then finish up over here.
In what ways has Brett Norfleet impressed you so far this season?
I think he's been super consistent, in the blocking game and the receiving game. I think he's been a really, really steady target, even yards after catch, like the Kansas game. I think he's been really good this season so far.
Drinkwitz said you've been one of the most coachable quarterbacks that he's been around. And then obviously you go through and you mentioned all these areas that you can improve on. What specifically has allowed you to be so self-aware and focus on these improvements?
Probably just because I always want to get better, and even after a great performance, I'm my biggest critic, always. I always look at, the things that I need to improve, so, and that's just the inner drive of wanting to be the best version of myself, and I'll always be that way. So just continuing to do that without being too hard on myself at the same time. You gotta keep a fair balance, but just kind of always, try to be the best version of myself.
Thanks, Beau.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.